Welcome to my World History Notes, where I just read from and discuss the book I wrote to teach homeschoolers world history, survey world history, just the surface, called A Bible Believer Looks at World History. You can find it on lulu.com, amazon.com, or the Bible Baptist Bookstore. Now, understand this book comes from the point of view of someone who believes the Bible. So you're not going to be satisfied with my conclusions if you're not a Christian, if you're not a somebody who believes the Bible, if you're, if you're, you just may not even you might like what I say, but I would ask you whether you're a Muslim or whether you're um, a Catholic or whether you're somebody who, from just some if you're an atheist, whatever. I ask you that if you're listening to this or if you read my book, that you at least learn about the events that I'm discussing and have your own conclusions, certainly, that are different from mine. That's fine. But at least know about the events. The worst thing for me is not that you disagree with me or you find something I say offensive. But the worst thing for me is that you go, I didn't know that. I never heard of that person. Who was that? When did that happen? Because these things come up. History repeats itself, as Santayana said. These things come up, and you're going to hear them and names and dribbles, and you go, you're not culturally literate. You don't know about them, and so you probably know, many of you, most of you probably know about specific things much more than I know. Okay, but know about these. So don't worry about, oh, I don't like what he said or I don't agree with him. Worry about, did I know that? Did I know about that person? Did I know about that event? So we'll begin today. So I'm going to start. The Anglo-Saxon invasion of England, composed of many tribes, including Anglo-Saxons and Jutes, from the area of far northern Germany, was achieved with very little resistance after the Battle of Diorum in 577. Durant tells us in his fourth volume of his epic history, the story of civilization called the Age of Faith. The many small kingdoms that resulted in the seven which came to dominate, Mercia, Northumberland, East Anglia, Wessex, Essex, Sussex, and Kent, with the Angles forming the first three, the Saxons the second three, and the Jutes the latter, were themselves combined into one kingdom by King Egbert of Wessex in 829. During that period of time, even before King Egbert, another invasion began to take place from people further north than the Germanic tribes that displaced the Roman Britons, the Celts. These newer invaders we've come to call Vikings. We'll come back to them in a little while. Um, and I want to say that outside of what I've written, there is also another strain of belief by some scholars that the Anglo-Saxon wasn't really an invasion; it was more like a gradual overtaking through immigration and merchants, a trade, and things like that, where civilization. So there were some violent events, but that cemented it, but that it was a gradual thing and not just like an invasion. So, keep that in mind. There's different views on this. In the East, 5 years after Justinian died in 565, leaving a great empire behind him and the plague and climatic catastrophe that rocked the world, a man named Mohammed was born into a poor family in Arabia, a country almost completely composed of desert or wilderness, the total wealth of which would not have furnished the inside of the church of Hagia Sophia, Holy Wisdom, in Constantinople. The majority of the people were nomadic, meaning they moved around without living in one fixed location, but in tents tending their herds and flocks, much like the Rechabites of Jeremiah 35. The desert Arab was idolatrous to the extreme, as it says in Jeremiah 3:2, worshipped many deities, gods, and feared a multitude of spirits called jinn, a word which is familiar to you in the word genie, as in genie in a bottle. Occasionally, they offered human sacrifice and worshiped stones. The most important center of this stone worship was Mecca. Now, again, there is a lot of differing opinions and viewpoints on these events. So I'm just bringing out my conclusions from what I've studied. If you want to learn about this, you need to study on your own. Okay. In a square structure called the Kaaba, which is where which in which where worship was Allah. I'm sorry, which is where our word cube comes from, was a sacred black stone. Among the many gods in the Kaaba, which were worshipped, was Allah, which is etymologically linked to Al-Ilat, according to Durant, mentioned as a major Arabian deity centuries before Herodotus. Allah's daughters were also worshipped: Al-Uzza, Al-Alat, and Mana. The Muslims might claim that Allah had no son, but he most certainly did at one time have daughters. The Quraysh tribe controlled the shrine, its priests and guardians, and controlled the government of Mecca. It's also been said by some scholars I've read that the word Allah comes from a contraction of words al-Ilah, meaning the one worshipped and the Lord of this house. An early reference I've read speaks of pagan Meccans praying to Allah while standing beside the image of another god, Hubal, which some scholars claim is actually a derivation of the ancient Canaanite Baal, the Babylonian Bel known as the Confounder. Note that Beelzebub, the prince of devils, is translated as the Lord of the house by Strong's Greek dictionary and called Satan himself by Jesus in Matthew 12:24 and 28. Herodotus, as I pointed out before, has connected Zeus of Grecian mythology to Bel of Babylon, which is also Baal or Beelzebub, Lord of the flies in Hebrew, of Canaan, and Beelzebub, Lord of the house in Greek, according to Strong's. Comparative mythologists like Campbell connect Zeus with Viracocha in Peru, Odin in Norse mythology, Quetzalcoatl of Mexico, along with numerous other deities around the world. It is very clear by these associations that the god Allah was not then and is not now the God of the Bible, Jehovah the Creator, but a derivation of Satan himself. There are several noteworthy books from which to study the origin of the god Allah, one of which is Muhammad's Mecca by W.M. Watt, who's written a number of scholarly works on Islam. By the way, I spell Muhammad's name with a variation, so there's, you're going to see it spelled differently. But understand, as an aside, understand that even Arabic Christians will say Allah when they're referring to God. So remember how Paul argued in Acts 17 with the Greeks, and he referred to a pagan poetry about Zeus, with their understanding that Zeus was the supreme God. So he was drawing a parallel. So be careful when you talk to a Muslim. Don't say Allah is Satan, because you shut off all communication. What you want to do is understand that he views Allah as the God who created everything. So there's your starting point as far as your witnessing. Saying to somebody you worship Satan is like, you're just shutting off any further communication. So keep that in mind. Let's not be such a well. Anyway, the orphan Muhammad's name means highly praised, and in the book attributed to him that he did not actually write, but containing a number of sayings and phrases he is alleged to have written down in several other places, the Quran, he equates himself with the Holy Spirit of God. It is claimed by some in the Islamic world that Muhammad was the Parakletos, the Comforter, promised to come to teach men all things, in John 14:26. Returning to Duran for a moment, he states that we know almost nothing of Muhammad's youth, although there are many Islamic fables concerning it. It is said that he was a highly self-disciplined man, a merchant who turned progressively to religion by the age of 40. There were many Christians in Arabia and in Mecca, and at least one who was close to Muhammad, named Waraka ibn Nawfal, a Catholic who knew, quote, the scriptures of the Hebrews and of the Christians, according to Marmaduke Pickthall in his The Meaning of the Glorious Quran. This is the basis for the theory of some extremists that the Roman Catholic Church had a hand in the formation of Arabic Islam as a bulwark against the Greek Church. This is a bit of a stretch, as the Greek Church had not split from Rome at the time of Islam's formation, and the influence of one person hardly constitutes proof that the hierarchy of the Roman Catholic Church was involved in a conspiracy. It is clear, though, that Muhammad knew of the Bible and understood much of it, but his knowledge was incomplete, as in the Quran, there are several gross errors, including mixing personages and the time frames they lived in with the events that characterized their lives. It is interesting to note as well that the Quran makes it quite clear that the Holy Land, Israel, belongs to the Jews, so that the Quran itself makes the Palestinian people trespassers. As with the references to who Allah actually is, you can, if you want to, I can pull up. You can pull up the surahs upon request on the internet. So I'm going to just do a little bit more about Muhammad today. So Muhammad visited Medina, the place where his father died, and was influenced by the large Jewish population there. Durant says he, quote, he felt the need of a new religion, perhaps the one that would unify all these factious groups into a virile and healthy nation, a religion that would give them morality, not earthbound to the Bedouin law of violence and revenge, but based upon commandments of divine origin and therefore of indisputable force. Islam at its outset was like Roman Catholicism, essentially a political religion designed to be an excuse for conquest and control. He withdrew eventually during the holy month of Ramadan to a cave at the foot of Mount Hira, 3 miles from Mecca, and would spend many days in fasting, prayer, and meditation. The year 610 was 3 years after Pope Boniface III began the first official use of the title Pope and was called Universal Bishop by the order of Emperor Phocas, ruling from Constantinople after a coup d'etat or overthrow of the legitimate emperor Maurice. In 610, Heraclius overthrew Phocas and beheaded him, having his mutilated body dragged through the streets. It was a year ending a period of violent uncertainty in the empire. Phocas was the last emperor to have a monument in the city of Rome in the Roman Forum itself. The Roman Empire, ruled from Constantinople, ruled the Middle East at this time. So then we're going to talk about what happened in 610 with Muhammad and how it got started, and this tremendous force that consists of over 1 billion adherents now, today's world, um, and just changed the face of the ancient, well, actually destroyed the ancient world, along with the climate change and stuff that we talked about before. So we're going to pick it up with one night in 610 next time. Thank you for watching.